Today, I think, even though the verse that's shown on the board is the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, we are going to be covering the preface and introduction for Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we'll go through a systematic study for this upcoming semester. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Gurudev ki jai, Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are going to recite a couple of the prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam that glorifies the Srimad Bhagavatam and also invocates auspiciousness. So Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayana, unto Naranarayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashtaprayeshu abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. All right. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada establishes the purpose and why we need to read Bhagavatam and what is the purpose of the and the goal of Srimad Bhagavatam is clearly described in his preface as well as the introduction. So in the preface, Srila Prabhupada goes on to describe how the human society at present is in need of such a literature. What is happening in this present moment? Again, the format of this session is going to be more interactive, so we would like to encourage everybody to kind of chip in. And also, if you have any questions, you don't have to wait until the end. You can just raise your hand and we can discuss those subjects at the time when it pops up in our minds. So what is happening in the world right now? Apart from the Harinam that you guys are doing. Wars, quarrels. COVID, yeah, all kinds of miseries, both bodily and adhyatmika, mental, and as well as adibhautika, which is by nature. I mean, there are so many things happening in nature. So, and people are suffering across the board. It's not that only one part of the world is going through a certain thing and everybody else is kind of happy or anything like that. There is in miseries as well as also in terms of finding solutions, so-called solutions, I suppose, material solutions to the miseries. Everybody is working towards so-called common cause, right? Like when COVID appeared, everybody jumped on the bandwagon. Oh, we need to develop vaccines. And so, I mean, all the governments, I mean, they funded so much money and so they did so much stuff. And they had some common cause, right? But at the same time, I mean, they're only successful to a certain extent, especially because they're focused on the material aspect of it, right? And so Prabhupada says that humanity is actually always trying to find a common cause. I mean, of course, a few years ago, we were going to, I mean, there was a theory that we were all going to be one currency or one world or one society and things. So they are looking for, and what is the basis of why they are looking for that common cause? Any idea? Why are we looking for that common thread, a common cause? Sorry? So because we are looking for, everybody is looking for peace and happiness, right? That's one thing. But also, we are all also part and parcels of the same Supreme Lord. So we have the same, I guess, what you call, we can say that we have the same impetus or same aspirations. Because we are Satchidananda, or which is, we want to be eternal, and we want to find happiness, and we want to know everything. Right? And that's why there are, even the 24/7 news channels are not sufficient enough. Now 24/7 on our phones, we are getting fed. And we are getting fed in so many different ways on how we can be happy. So we are trying to find some common ground or common cause. And so Prabhupada says that this Srimad Bhagavatam is actually the cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. Again, I want to mention this point because I don't want to have any interpretation. Prabhupada says that this Srimad Bhagavatam is a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of the entire human society. So it's a very powerful aspect of our Vedic philosophy, and because Prabhupada says that in his preface that the reason the human society is in so much despair is because what is one of the reasons that you can think of? Yes? Lack of connection to
each other and to God.
Lack of connection to each other as well as to ourselves. Yeah. So the three aspects, right? We don't know who we are, first of all, and we don't know who the others around us are, or what is the relation, and also we don't know the relation or who the Supreme Lord is. So Prabhupada actually says that the disparity is because of the lack of principles in a godless civilization. Right? So, and what does Srimad Bhagavatam do to address that concern? It actually explains in the first verse itself, Actually, not even the first verse. In the first phrase of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Janmadi Yasya Yata. Right? Basically, it says that it explains or it identifies the ultimate source of everything. So it addresses the issue that we are having in terms of who we are and what is our relation to the Supreme Lord. It addresses, and how does it address? It addresses, Prabhupada says that it addresses in a rational manner and in an authoritative manner, because that's very important. Because we can say so many things. Nowadays with the social media, everybody is a guru and everybody is a authority, right? And everybody, whatever they post it on Facebook, on their Twitter feed is the news for that day or authority for that subject matter. So, but Srimad Bhagavatam actually, in a more scientific way and more rational manner, it explains how this disparity among human society and among the living beings can be addressed by this subject matter that's stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's not only, as you mentioned, what's your name? Keeling. So as you mentioned, it's not only addresses the ultimate source, but also it addresses the relationship aspect of it, like you mentioned. So it not only knowing who we are, but also what is our relationship with that Supreme Lord, and how also the other thing is the goal. So there are three things, right? One is what is it, and how, and the second thing is where can it be found and how to approach it. So the goal is also very important. So it addresses the relationship as well as the goal on how the human society can attain the perfection in their lives. And how do we, and also Prabhupada explains how the Srimad Bhagavatam should be read. Because nowadays, we are so, of course, when we were, initially when we go to school, we don't skip to the last chapter of the book, right? We always start from the start. We always started with learning our ABCDs, and then we slowly learn the words and phrases, sentences and things like that. Same thing with Srimad Bhagavatam. It's actually need to be read in a systematic manner. So Srila Prabhupada says that in the preface that the only qualification one needs to study this great book of transcendental knowledge is to proceed step by step, cautiously, and not jump forward haphazardly, as with any ordinary book. It should be gone through chapter by chapter, one after another. The reading matter is so arranged that one is sure to become a God-realized soul at the end of finishing the first 9 cantos. So the first 9 cantos are very significant in understanding the ultimate source and in terms of understanding the relationships and the goal on why we need to achieve that, understand these points. And then the 10th canto is actually, Prabhupada says that the 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it directly deals with the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. And we cannot get those aspects or understand or realize or those aspects of the 10th canto we will not be able to, they will not be revealed to us unless otherwise we go through these first 9 cantos in a systematic way. So, the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is actually said that it is the representation of the Supreme Lord Himself. It's a it's a reincarnation of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Right? When Sri Krishna departed after performing his pastimes, and as the Kali Yuga started coming on, and so in this age he wanted to appear. He appeared as Srimad Bhagavatam because so that everybody can be approached with this with him. And the way it is explained is that in the Bhagavad Gita, it's explained that the Lord appears in every age to, why does he appear? To protect the devotees and of course to destroy the miscreants. And the miscreants in this age are in all of our hearts. It is described that in the Satya Yuga, the demoniac and devotees were on different planetary systems. And so people used to fight between planets. So devotees used to be on one planet and demoniac personalities used to be on another planet. But when it came to the next age, which is Treta Yuga, the personality, actually the demoniac and devotees were on different countries. In case of Lord Ramachandra's pastimes that we will learn later on in the Srimad Bhagavatam, like Lord Ramachandra was based in India, and whereas the demoniac personality, his counterpart is Ravana, was in Sri Lanka, which is different countries. And when it came to Dwapara Yuga, when Krishna appeared in his personal form, what happened? In the same family, the demoniac and devotees appeared in the same family, the Kuru dynasty. And they obviously they had a big war and so forth. And when it came to the age of Kali, what happens to the demoniac and devotees? Where do they appear? In the same person. In the same person, because we have both the demoniac and devotee natures. And so it's not, in the previous ages, obviously the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna appeared in different in his different expansions and in different incarnations, so that he can destroy the demoniac persons. But in this age, because everybody almost have some tinge of the demoniac nature and some tinge of devotee nature, obviously we cannot go on killing each other, right? That's what Nityananda Prabhu explains to Lord Chaitanya when Lord Chaitanya tries to kill Jagai and Madai, when these two miscreants try to hurt Lord Nityananda. Lord Chaitanya reminds Lord Nityananda reminds Lord Chaitanya that in this particular age, the mission of the Supreme Lord is to actually dispel the demoniac nature from our hearts. And how does he do that? By incarnating in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. And of course Lord Chaitanya came also, the Supreme Lord came also in the form of Lord Chaitanya as a form of a devotee, so that he can actually show us by example on how this devotional service needs to be performed, or how can it be performed and how can it be perfected. So the Srimad Bhagavatam is the life of all Bhagavatas, right? What is a Bhagavata means? Who is a Bhagavata? Yeah, who speaks Bhagavatam or who follows the Bhagavata Dharma, who lives by the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, is a Bhagavata, right? So there are obviously in the first canto, first chapter, we will go into more details in terms of how the Srimad Bhagavatam appeared and who spoke and all those points. But again, the things that we need to consider is in this particular age, the religion or dharma took shelter in Srimad Bhagavatam, because this is what is prescribed for this age. And of course, Lord Chaitanya came and he gave the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as the form of purification, so that we can dispel our demoniac natures from our hearts, right? And also, as Srila Vyasadeva, the author of this Srimad Bhagavatam, as we read in the invocation prayers, he wrote all the Vedic literatures, right? Then, but he, why did he has to write this particular Srimad Bhagavatam? What is the purpose? I mean, he actually wrote the Vedas, and then he was not satisfied, and then because they were too vast, and so then he developed Vedanta Sutras, right, to summarize them. But then he felt that it was only for intellectual kind of personalities, and then he went on to write the Puranas for the regular folks, so that non-intellectual people can also understand the essence of the Vedas. And the Puranas also he developed into different modes, like mode of goodness Puranas, mode of passion Puranas, and mode of ignorance Puranas. So that's why there is different kind of, it's basically to make sure that everybody has some opportunity to raise or to elevate themselves to higher consciousness, to elevate themselves to this devotional service aspect of it. And Srimad Bhagavatam is considered as it's a mode of goodness Purana, right? And it's actually described in the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is described that it is Sarva Shastrabe Punyaha. So it's actually called nectar of all Vedic literatures. It's the essence of all Vedic literatures. And it's also described as the mature fruit of all Vedic literatures. And it's also described as a conclusive truth of all, it's a crown jewel of all conclusive truths, right? Because in many scriptures, I mean, if you go through the Vedas, there might be different truths that might be revealed. But this is what the subject matter in the Srimad Bhagavatam is, the conclusion of all those subject matters. And also, it shows the right vision and right path to the entire humanity. That is the purpose of this Srimad Bhagavatam. It shows that it gives the direction for the entire human society. And it's also, it's actually described, the age of Kali is, as we discussed earlier, Kali means it's age of quarrels. And the quarrels happen because of the misunderstandings. People tend to think, oh, this person said this and this person said that, and they go all over the place. And this Amala Purana, this Srimad Bhagavata Purana, is described by our acharyas is that it is the sun that dissipates all the darkness, all the misunderstandings of this age. And as we discussed, the different, there are totally 12 cantos in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and there are these 12 cantos signify the different aspects of the personal form of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. So the first two cantos, number 1 and 2, actually are described by our acharyas. They signify the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, right? And Canto 3 and 4. So when we come to take the darshan of the Lord, how our acharyas recommended to see the darshan? We see the darshan all the way from starting from the lotus feet to the face. Right? So the lotus feet is, so whenever you come next time to take darshan, whenever you're seeing the darshan, you can actually think how the lotus feet actually signifies the Srimad Bhagavatam's first and second cantos. Right? And the third and fourth cantos are the thighs of the Supreme Lord. And the fifth canto is described as the navel, and the sixth canto is the chest, 7 and 8 arms, and 9th is the throat, and the 10th is the lotus face, and the 11th is the forehead, and 12th is the head. So these 12 cantos actually are the personification of the Supreme Lord himself. Right? And also in the introduction, Srila Prabhupada goes on to describe how this Srimad Bhagavatam, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vasudev, how he offers his respectful obeisances unto the Parama Satyam, absolute truth. So this Srimad Bhagavatam describes the absolute truth aspect of the Supreme Lord. And also Lord Chaitanya describes that there are, he mentions that there are some conclusive opinions about Srimad Bhagavatam. And why, actually, Srila Prabhupada describes that before we learn about Srimad Bhagavatam, we should also learn about Lord Chaitanya. Because Lord Chaitanya is the one who actually brought this Srimad Bhagavatam into our devotional service, into our learning aspect of it. Because it is says that Srila Prabhupada says that it is imperative one learn the Srimad Bhagavatam from the person Bhagavatam. The person Bhagavatam is one whose very life is Srimad Bhagavatam in practice. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the absolute personality of Godhead. He is the Bhagavan and Bhagavatam in person and in sound. Therefore, his process of approaching the Srimad Bhagavatam is practical for all people of the world. It was his wish that the Srimad Bhagavatam be preached in every nook and corner of the world by those who happen to take their birth in India. So, and Srila Prabhupada actually describes the life and precepts of Lord Chaitanya in the rest of the introduction, because he wants to make sure that we have the appreciation for the person Bhagavatam that actually personified the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's Lord Chaitanya's. And so Srila Prabhupada goes on to explain how Lord Chaitanya appeared in India in 1486. It's actually the same time where what else happened in 1480s? Anybody remembers their history? Huh? Right. Actually 1486, that's when it was the golden age in India started with the appearance of the Lord Chaitanya. Right? It is the same time, of course, as Krishna Kripa Prabhu mentioned, the Europeans actually learned about this, the most opulent place in the world in terms of knowledge, in terms of wealth, everything. India. And so they all wanted to head towards there. And so the infamous Christopher Columbus voyage, like 1482, he discovered, of course he was heading to India, but he went in the wrong direction and got stuck here. So, so it's because it's described that the golden age actually started, for the Kali Yuga, started with the appearance of Lord Chaitanya. And it is described by our acharyas that is it next 10,000 years, right? Since the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, it's considered as the golden age. And so we are very fortunate to be in this moment, and especially following the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in this age, to follow his teachings and his life. So Lord Chaitanya appeared in 1486 in West Bengal, and at the time the Navadvip where he appeared was considered as the I guess the Oxford of today. Is it still Oxford is the highest learning place? So it is the highest learning place in the entire world. And that's where his father was a very learned scholar. He actually relocated to this Navadvip Dham, and that's where Lord Chaitanya appeared. And of course, Lord Chaitanya, even through his appearance, he appeared, it is described that he appeared on a full moon day when there is a lunar eclipse, right? And typically on a lunar eclipse day, there used to be a lot of chanting of the holy names, because it's considered inauspicious. So to bring auspiciousness, people chant the holy names. And so it is described by our acharyas that the way, actually Srila Prabhupada also explains in the introduction that when Lord Chaitanya appeared, everybody was chanting the holy names. And so he is actually, he brought in the light of the holy names to dissipate the darkness of the lunar eclipse, sort of. So he was very, and then even through his childhood pastimes, he was very much attached to the holy names. And so it is described in the introduction that when he used to, in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that when he was crying as a small baby, when the neighbor girls chant the holy names, he used to immediately get calmed down, and he used to be very happy. So he was actually propagating the holy names even when he was a child, small child. And then he goes on to perform many wonderful pastimes. Actually, Srila Prabhupada describes a number of different wonderful pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in the introduction. And some of the pastimes are so when Lord Chaitanya was a small boy or a baby, actually some thieves try to steal him, and of course he goes on their shoulders, and they get deluded, and they actually come to because he was constantly chanting the holy names, and they kind of bring him back to the same place where they found him, because they couldn't find any other place to steal the jewelry of him. So they bring him back to the same place, and they get distracted. And also Lord Chaitanya then starts, after he was a very scholarly person as he was going through his childhood. He learned logic, and so he was very perfect in logic. And he actually started his own school when he was very young on the logic, and then he used to teach the students, And then he also has beaten some great Mayavada scholars, some of the scholars who came, like one was Keshava Kashmiri. Once he comes to Navadvip to, basically he was going on a world tour to basically defeat all the scholars so that he can demonstrate himself as the super scholar kind of thing. It's like the version of the, what is that, Idol, right? American Idol. So he was going on describing basically, so and so when he came to Navadvip, the scholars in Navadvip thought that, they knew this person is very formidable, so they thought that we can put this Nimai, as Lord Chaitanya used to be known. He was only 12-year-old boy, so we can put him in front of Keshava Kashmiri, and if he defeats Nimai, then we can say that, oh, he is a small boy, that's why you were able to defeat, so we have another chance. And if he gets defeated by Nimai, then obviously a small boy from Navadvip actually were able to defeat. So when he met Nimai on the banks of the Ganges, Keshava Kashmiri instantly composed 100 shlokas glorifying Ganga or Ganges. And then Lord Chaitanya took 64th shloka of whatever he recited, and he basically says that you misrepresented that particular aspect of Ganga. And so he defeats Keshava Kashmiri with so much, basically with his knowledge and with his logic. And so as Lord Chaitanya, then of course, then he took the sannyas because he wanted to, at the age of 24 years, he took the sannyas, and he wanted to preach this Bhagavata Dhamma for all walks of life, because when he was a householder, people were not respecting him as much, so that's why he took the sannyas ashram, and at the age of 24. And then there are a lot more details in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and as well as Srila Prabhupada describes in the introduction, but due to the time, as Lord Chaitanya then starts the Sankirtan movement in the in West Bengal, and then also after sannyas, he makes Jagannath Puri as his residential residence, and he performs many wonderful activities in Jagannath Puri, and then also he travels to South India, and then he meets Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami and the Goswamis, and he directs them to, he guides them with his instructions, and also directs them to go and find places of Lord Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. And and he has, like Srila Prabhupada describes, he exemplified the Srimad Bhagavatam in terms of how a Bhagavata lives his life based on the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam. And so Lord Chaitanya actually describes his conclusive opinions in terms of the devotional service as Aradhya. The object of worship is Sri Krishna. He says that the Aradhya, the object of worship is Sri Krishna. And Dharma is the transcendental abode is Vrindavan. The most of all the Tadhama Vrindavana. So he says that the transcendental of all the abodes is Vrindavan. And also he describes that the upasana, the worship, the transcendental of all the worships is the worship that is performed by the gopis, the Vraja gopis of in Lord Krishna's pastimes. And then he also says that the pramanam, the spotless authority. What is the spotless authority? Is Srimad Bhagavatam. That's the conclusive opinion of Lord Chaitanya. And the goal of life, Ardha, is prema, the pure love of God. So Srimad Bhagavatam actually, as Lord Chaitanya mentioned, it's a spotless authority, but also Srimad Bhagavatam contains the other four conclusive opinions, or describes the other four conclusive opinions in the chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Like the Aradhya, the object of worship, right, Krishna. It emphatically, clearly states in pastime after pastime and chapter after chapter, canto after canto, it clearly states that Sri Krishna is the worshipable Lord, object of worship, right? And also it describes the wonderful pastimes of Vrindavan in the 10th canto, the first, I think, 37 chapters of 10th canto, where it describes how Vrindavan is the transcendental abode of all the abodes. And also how the worship of the Vraja Gopis is the supermost devotional service of all the devotees. And of course, Srimad Bhagavatam glorifies itself in the chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because time and again Shukadeva Goswami and Suta Goswami, the narrators of the Srimad Bhagavata Purana, they describe the glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam in the chapters itself. And of course the Ardha, or the goal of life, is clearly described through many examples of wonderful personalities in the chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam as the prema, or the pure love of God. That is the ultimate goal of life. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the life of all Bhagavatas, and it shows the vision and the path to all the entire humanity, right? And also it is described that there is wonderful glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam in various scriptures. Why it is important for us to read this wonderful narration or wonderful Purana, it is described. It is actually said that it is Uttama Shloka Charita. It is the description of all the wonderful, the most auspicious, the most glorious verses. And it's all successful, all blissful, and it's all perfect. That's what is the Srimad Bhagavatam is described as. And also it destroys all the anarthas, right? And also it establishes bhakti yoga, the devotional, the yoga, the devotional service in our lives, in the lives of devotees. And it is the solution to all the miseries. As we were discussing, I mean, there are so many miseries, or so many things of quarrels and disparity is going on. So this Srimad Bhagavatam is the destroyer, dispel all those miseries. So as we are describing this Srimad Bhagavatam, so it is in the next chapter onwards, we will be discussing in detail in terms of the ultimate source, and how that ultimate source can be worshipped, and what is the relationship, how that can be established, and what is the goal of human form of life will be in detail. At this point, I'd like to open it for discussion. If you have any questions or comments that we would like to bring up. Yes.
Thank you so much. Wow. I was wondering, every church you go to, they say, our books are the best. Our books are the perfect authority. our books are the only way. So what makes us different? What makes the Bhagavatam different?
Yeah, so actually Srila Prabhupada describes that there is, in the preface itself, that he describes that the conception of the God and the conception of absolute truth are not on the same level. So most, I guess most other religions, they try to describe the conception of God in terms of, oh, this is our understanding kind of thing. But whereas Srimad Bhagavatam is actually narrates the absolute truth, or describes the conception of absolute truth, right? And through the vision of, through the experience of many devotees, right? And it is actually establishes in a more scientific and rational and authoritative. It's not that, oh, just because I said it kind of thing, right? It actually it shows by examples of many devotees who perfected by following the principles of Srimad Bhagavatam, by following the teachings, and how they attained the perfection. So in that way it is more, it's also, Prabhupada describes in this introduction, it's a universal religion. It's not that it's my religion versus your religion. Srimad Bhagavatam is basically, it exemplifies, of course it exemplifies Sri Krishna as the Supreme Lord, but it also says that the Supreme Lord is for all the living beings. It's not that your thing and my thing is different. Does it make sense? Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. I think Sarvabhauma Prabhu had something. Oh, so, who else said it?
In so many ways, the Bhagavatam is more complete. Like other religious texts talk about God, but they don't give a description of God's form, His pastimes, His qualities. Somewhere Prabhupada said you can have a pocket dictionary and a very big, complete dictionary. So the principles of other religions, that there is a God, that we should surrender, are factual, but the Bhagavatam is much more complete.
Right. Yeah, it's more elaborate and more precise in terms of the description of the...
In the Bible, like Jesus said, there's more that I would tell you, but you cannot bear to hear it now. So he's talking simple principles.
Right. Yeah. Sadhu Sangha Prabhu has something to share.
I really like the beginning of the class and the discussion about how it's important for human society, spiritualization of human society, because everyone is finding happiness, trying to find happiness through the material world, and it's creating so many confusions and frustrations. Actually, material nature is like, they say a boat is a hole in the water that you throw money into. So material life is like that. It's just like this thing you do that you throw your energy into, and it just doesn't make you happy. It doesn't give back to you. Without the sun, the whole place is dark, right? Completely dark. So when we learn spirituality, we actually start, reciprocation comes from Krishna, and we actually find something. So that's the thing that's going to help everyone, just across the board. So I just spiritualization is like everything for happiness, actually. So Bhagavatam gives us that. So I wanted to thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. That reminds me of another point that Srila Prabhupada says, that actually in the introduction, that Srimad Bhagavatam actually reciprocates. So as you read, it's not that, like we read many mundane books, right? Whatever is the latest things. But Srimad Bhagavatam, when you read, Krishna actually is reciprocating with you in your life, in each step. Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Giridhari ki jai. Shri Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Shri Nitai Gauri Chanditai Chaitanya. So Srimad Bhagavatam actually, the reading of Srimad Bhagavatam, it actually reciprocates with us through, in our devotional service. And so, do we have another question, or yeah, we'll take this last one and we'll
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu, for wonderful class. I like this format of theme-based study. I just wanted to add, this Prabhu's question, and I wanted to add a little comment on what you said and what Sarvabhauma Prabhu said about how Bhagavatam is different from other, others' faith or religion. How can we, scientifically and solidly understand that? So one aspect is, there is a word called aparusheya. Purusha means people, ordinary people who have 4 defects. Tendency to cheat, tendency to make mistakes, to be illusioned, and imperfect senses. People in general have these 4 problems. So if we can identify a person who is beyond these 4 defects, so there are great personalities like Vyasadeva. He is beyond these 4 defects. So this personality, when they compose something, it is also perfect. So Bhagavatam is composed by Srila Vyasadeva, who has also compiled the Vedas and Upanishads and other literatures. So that is one aspect of that why we should put our 100% faith into Bhagavatam. The other aspect, when we study Bhagavatam, it describes past, present, and future. When it was compiled 5,000 years ago, but it also describes events in the future as well. So we can validate those from that as well. 5th canto describes, the whole, our solar systems, the whole universe structure, 9 planets, their movements, how it, in orbits and everything, very scientifically. So we can see it's not just blind faith or some sort of somebody's philosophy, but it is very solidly scientifically established truth. It is there. Today we can go and validate it. It also describes, how baby is conceived in the womb and, their complete growth, during that 9 months or 10 months, how, the baby grows. Very from minute details, it is talking. So it's very scientific. So that's how we can put our faith in Srimad Bhagavatam and Vedic literature. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. All right, thank you all for your participation, and again, wish you all good luck for the rest of the semester. And if there is anything else we can be of service, please let us know. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Srimad Gandharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.